Right now, there's a global competition happening, and Jamaica is right in the middle of it. It's not about tourism. It's not about remittances. It's about bauxite, the raw material behind the world's aluminum supply. And in 2026, that resource is becoming strategic again. Two global powers are making moves. The United States recently highlighted a $450 million investment tied to the alumina supply chain connected to Jamaica at the State Department level. China, through a state-owned company, already holds one of Jamaica's major alumina refineries, and discussions around its reopening are ongoing. The question is, in this new bauxite boom, who actually wins? But this story didn't start today. At its peak in the 1970s and 1980s, Jamaica was one of the world's leading bauxite producers. The red hills of St. Elizabeth, Manchester, and St. Anne weren't just landscape. They were economic fuel. Bauxite and alumina dominated export earnings, built communities, and anchored the country's foreign exchange. Then came the downturns. Global prices fell, refineries closed, and Jamaica slowly lost ground to larger producers like Australia, Guinea, and Brazil. But Jamaica never left the global supply chain. Today, the country remains one of the top global bauxite producers. The sector pulled in US $760 million in export earnings in 2024, one-third more than the year before. And in 2023, Jamaica produced close to 6 million tons, one of the highest output levels in recent years, with the majority of crude bauxite exports going directly to the United States. Jamaica may no longer dominate global production, but it still plays a critical role in the supply chain. And in 2026, that role just got a whole lot more strategic. So, what changed? Why is this sector back in the spotlight? Two things are happening at the same time, and they're pulling in opposite directions. Global aluminum demand is climbing. China's aluminum production rose 4% in just the first 5 months of 2025. Construction, transport, manufacturing all pulling more aluminum from the global market. But the cost of producing bauxite is climbing too. The Jamaica Bauxite Institute issued a warning just days ago. Tensions around the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical oil shipping routes, are rippling directly into Jamaica's production costs. When energy flows are disrupted anywhere in the world, an island economy that runs its mines and refineries on imported fuel feels it. The result? Alumina exports in Q3 2025 came in at 374,266 tons, down 5.3% quarter-over-quarter, even while 13% higher year-on-year. Rising demand, rising costs, squeezed margins in the middle. That tension is the environment Jamaica's bauxite sector is operating in right now. And it's exactly why what the US and China are doing matters so much. Let's talk about what the United States is doing, because this is significant. In December 2025, a company called Atalco Atlantic Alumina closed a $450 million financing deal for a project spanning St. Anne, Jamaica, and Gramercy, Louisiana. That included $150 million in equity tied to US-aligned investment interests, with another $300 million from private investors. Crucially, the project was highlighted by the US State Department at the 2026 Critical Minerals Ministerial, a clear signal of how seriously Washington views this supply chain. The goal? Boost alumina output to over 1 million metric tons per year and begin producing gallium at the Louisiana refinery. Now, gallium might sound like a footnote. It's not. Gallium is critical for semiconductors, defense electronics, and high-tech manufacturing, and Jamaica's bauxite happens to contain it. The Gramercy refinery was built specifically to process Jamaican ore. Here's the wider context. The United States currently has just 4 aluminum smelters, which together produced less than 700 tons in 2025. In 1980, 33 American smelters produced 4.65 million tons. The US has become a net importer of a metal it now classifies as strategically vital. China, meanwhile, controls over 60% of global aluminum production capacity. So, when the US government highlights an investment in Jamaican bauxite at the State Department level, that's not a coincidence. That's a supply chain strategy, and Jamaica is part of the architecture. Now let's talk about China. China accounts for roughly 60% of global aluminum production. That's not a market share, that's dominance. But here's the paradox. China's own domestic bauxite reserves are depleting. As production has grown, Chinese alumina plants have become increasingly reliant on imported raw materials. In 2024 alone, China imported 158.7 million tons of bauxite, with Guinea supplying nearly 70% of that. China is in a constant race to lock in bauxite supply around the world, and Jamaica is part of that picture. In 2016, the Chinese state-owned industrial conglomerate Jiuquan Iron and Steel Jisco purchased the Alpart refinery in Nain, St. Elizabeth for US $300 million. Alpart is a major alumina refinery rated at 1.65 million tons per year, with plans under Jisco to expand that to 2 million tons annually. Operations were suspended in 2019 for a major modernization and upgrade. The plant has not yet reopened. As of early 2026, Jisco and the Jamaican government are in ongoing discussions, with plans to resume operations this year. When Alpart does reopen, it will be a Chinese-owned facility. On Jamaican soil, refining Jamaican bauxite and feeding it into Chinese industrial supply chains. China doesn't just produce aluminum, it depends on countries like Jamaica to supply the raw material that makes it possible. So, where does this leave Jamaica? Sitting at a crossroads between 2 global superpowers, both of which need what's in the ground here. Jamaica has decades of established infrastructure, mines, processing plants, export ports, and shipping routes. The Discovery Bay port on the north coast, Port Kaiser in St. Elizabeth. These aren't being built from scratch, they're already part of the global supply chain. The US is the primary destination for Jamaica's crude bauxite. The Italco deal deepens that pipeline. Ore leaves Jamaica, gets refined in Louisiana, and is processed into alumina and gallium for American defense and tech industries. China, through Jisco Alpart, has a physical stake in the island's refining capacity with ambitions to expand it. Jamaica isn't just exporting raw ore, it's feeding 2 competing industrial systems at once. And that's where the story gets complicated. Here's the question that doesn't get asked enough. If Jamaica is this strategically important, if hundreds of millions of dollars are flowing in, if 2 superpowers are competing over Jamaican ore, then why hasn't that translated into transformational wealth for Jamaica? Think about what actually happens to the bauxite. It gets mined here. Some of it gets refined into alumina locally. But the next steps, smelting into aluminum, manufacturing into finished products, almost all of that happens elsewhere. In Louisiana, in China, in Canada. Export earnings of US $760 million sound significant, and they are. But compare that to the value of the finished aluminum products ultimately made from Jamaican ore, and the gap is enormous. The real value in this supply chain isn't in the mining, it's in the refining, the smelting, the manufacturing. And most of that value doesn't stay on this island. That's the core tension and the real story behind the boom. Let's be specific about the risks facing this sector right now. Energy costs are the most immediate. Jamaica's bauxite operations run on imported fuel. When global energy prices rise, and right now with Hormuz tensions, they are every ton mined and every ton refined costs more. There's also caustic soda, a critical refining chemical whose price tracks energy markets. Both are squeezing margins from the inside. Freight and insurance are squeezing from the outside. Tankers rerouting away from conflict zones means longer voyages and higher insurance premiums. For an island economy that exports everything by sea, that's a direct hit. Market dependency is the structural risk. Jamaica doesn't set the price of bauxite or aluminum, it accepts whatever price global markets dictate. When Chinese demand slows or US industrial policy shifts, Jamaica feels it immediately with no buffer. The GISCO question is the most politically loaded. Alpart has been idle since 2019. That's years of lost jobs, lost production, and lost revenue for communities in St. Elizabeth and Manchester. When it reopens under Chinese ownership, Jamaica gains employment and production capacity, but the refinery output flows toward Chinese supply chains. The value added leaves the island. These are the real fault lines inside the boom. What we're watching in 2026 is a supply chain battle between the world's two largest economies, playing out in mines and ports and refineries across dozens of countries, including this island. China has moved aggressively into Guinea, which now supplies 70 to 80% of China's imported bauxite. Chinese state-owned firms dominate that relationship. It's not subtle. The US, recognizing that concentration risk, is building an alternative supply chain through allied and partner nations. Jamaica, close to the American East Coast, politically stable, with infrastructure already in place and a long trade history with the US, is a natural node in that architecture. The Atalco deal is the clearest evidence of that strategy in action. And Jamaica is now navigating both relationships simultaneously, crude bauxite flowing north into American supply chains, while a Chinese company holds a major refinery on the island in active discussions to resume operations. Jamaica's bauxite isn't just a commodity anymore, it's a strategic asset in a competition for industrial power. And that changes what Jamaica's options actually are. So who wins in Jamaica's bauxite boom? The honest answer is, it depends on decisions that haven't been made yet. Jamaica's bauxite industry is rising again in export earnings, in production, in global strategic importance. The numbers support that. The US investment signals it. China's presence on the island confirms it. But the history of resource-rich nations is clear. Production volume doesn't automatically translate into national wealth. Not if the value chain is owned and controlled elsewhere. The real challenge for Jamaica isn't just producing more, it's negotiating smarter. It's building more of the value chain at home. It's using this moment of geopolitical attention, when both Washington and Beijing need what Jamaica has to extract better terms, more local processing, more of the wealth that stays on the island. Because right now, Jamaica has leverage. The question is whether it will use it, and that story is still being written. If you want to go deeper on this, drop a comment. We're tracking the Gisco Alpart reopening, the Atalco project, and what Jamaica's next budget says about the mining sector. Subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to know what's happening in Jamaica's hills. This is bigger than bauxite.